funny with music, you never say I work music, you say I play music, which of course is true. But I think all creative job is sort of play. Play is a way of exploring things, you know. You sort of watch what you're doing and the consequences feed back into your life. Let me see, how many pieces do I now have in here? 10,550 tracks. Equates to a listening time of 44 days, 8 hours, 38 minutes and 28 seconds. So as soon as I click this, it's going to make a new piece of music, which will be some random combination from my nearly 11,000. Yeah. I can guarantee pretty certainly that I will never have heard this piece before.
It's a heady time for art, those who make it and those who love it. In the undertow of innovation, scale, and the infinite possibility of an AI future, we may just forget what art does. So creative groundbreaker Brian Eno has written a book about it, reminding us that art is about building community and finding yourself in the process. Put it on the shelf next to all the music, innovation, art installations, literature, and most low-key of all, smash hit albums that Brian Eno has contributed to, and we have ourselves a conversation for the ages. Let's hope AI is listening.
Hi, Zane.
Hi. Can I give you a hug?
You could.
I might smell a bit. I just did.
Good to see you.
I've been working hard.
Thanks for seeing me. I've been lucky enough to speak with you both on camera and off camera a few times in my life now, but I always love being here in your house of play.
My house of play, yeah. Well, it's the place I like being most as well.
Yeah.
In the world.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
I hardly ever go to my flat because there's nothing much to do there except sleep.
Yeah, well, I wonder what life was. I mean, it's not even really a question you need to answer because you're probably always thinking about seeing things through art, as I've read the book and I can see it's everywhere.
Oh, you got the book?
I love the book,
good.
by the way.
But
I sort of wonder what it was like when you leave here and whether or not you purposefully detach or you just keep thinking about things and moving.
Well, I read at home. That's what I mostly do there. I read and sleep. And then here I work. But I work at home actually as well. Yeah. Writing.
Is it work? Oh, this is the thing, right? I suppose to some degree there's always desks here and computers and some people you work with that I'm sure you compensate fairly and that's kind of all the hallmarks of work, but it really is a creative space. So is there a distinction between the two, or is that the point, that there isn't, that the play is the work and the work is the play?
Yeah, it's funny with music, you never say I work music, you say I play music, don't you?
Yeah.
Which of course is true.
Yeah.
But I think all creative job is sort of play. Play is a way of exploring things, you know. Play is when you try something out for fun, but you sort of watch what you're doing and the consequences feed back into your life and what you do in the rest of your life, I think.
But then we're told later in life that to stop playing the children's game and to get to work.
Yeah.
And what I loved about this book, what art does, is it focuses on the idea of play and the feeling that you get out of that.
Yeah.
And more importantly, the importance that has in the way that society relates to each other, community finds one another, and all the way through to some of the big concepts that we are distracted by politics and policy and world change, that art is in all of it. And I love that this was a reminder and also educated people to some degree, if they bother to pick it up, that that's the reality, that it is, that why does it get trivialized?
Yeah.
Why?
It's because we don't take play seriously. I mean, we're all aware that when children are playing, they're learning. That's how children understand things about materials, about people around them, about how society works, about how traffic works, about how everything works.
Yeah.
They try it all out in play. And we fully understand that that's how children learn. But then for some reason, we think about the age of 11, they stop learning like that.
Yeah.
And they start learning through books.
It's almost like we're being told. I remember as a kid, and I was lucky, I had parents who encouraged me to follow play. But when I went to school, I felt like the message was, get ready for the real world.
Yeah, that's right.
And basically, in a way, what that says is get ready to contribute. Isn't it?
Well, it also says get ready to be obedient. Get ready to stop being awkward to handle. Let us know exactly what you do and where you fit into the scheme of things and just stay there. Education doesn't, at the general normal level, doesn't encourage too much play, actually. Play is chaotic in a sense. In terms of capitalism, the more we are obedient consumers and nothing else, the more useful we are to capitalism. You know, we fit nicely into the system. We go and do our jobs, and which keeps the whole machine running. We spend the money that we earned in the machine. So the whole thing is kept going by things like that. And there's nothing in it for capitalism to say, hey, stop doing all of that. Do what you want to do. If you want to do doesn't produce more money to run the system, then it isn't a valid aim. I don't think that's conspiratorial. That's just the way things have evolved. You know, if profit is your essential motive, that's the kind of system that will evolve. It doesn't mean that there's some evil person who thought, I just want to keep that Zane Lowe in his place. It's better for the system if you are kept in your place.
But that's what's great about the book, though, is it's not rejecting the idea of us all playing a role in keeping society moving. I loved that page where you began to explain the amount of people and dedication it took just to get you to work that day.
Yes.
Thousands of individuals over potentially hundreds of years who have been chipping away and innovating to try to create an efficient way for you to get to work. But I liked it because I felt that for people who are afraid to exercise their right to play, to search for a way to create, that it's an additive experience, not a replacement to work, to the things that you do, that if you add it to your life, it might actually make the other things more interesting.
Yes, I mean, we've sort of inverted things now where people are defined by their work rather than what they do outside of their work, which is a pity, really, isn't it? Because the things that those people are most interested in are usually the things outside. You know, people talk about their holidays or the things they do at the weekend. So that's the center of their lives. But as far as capitalism is concerned, the center of your life is your job, what you contribute to keeping the machine running. So I think that's an error of perspective, really. Again, it doesn't mean that there have to be evil people planning it. But if you set the system up that way, with those values, then you get those results.
Yeah,
same
people
with
serve those values,
Yeah.
What are you going to say about social media?
Well, exactly the same thing. Social media was set up not to make people happier, which it could have been set up for. That could have been the stated aim. But it was set up to maximize engagement, because engagement translates into profit. So that was and if you want to maximize engagement, there's no better way than to make people angry, resentful, etc., etc.
Which is hard on the arts. There's enough criticism out there. I mean, I think if you're an artist now, you show up and there's a queue outside the door of people who want to tell you what you did and what you made. And I think it takes great courage to create
or
art
stubbornness.
And share it.
I think stubbornness is actually the important value now.
It's that secret ingredient.
I really do. I think more and more, I think the people who make a difference are the ones who just refuse to be deterred and who are stubborn. They can't be made to stop. I admire those people.
But a lot of those people also have a vulnerability to them. There's a paradox between sensitivity and stubbornness, isn't there? You know? Like what is the part that gets somebody over that sense of internal crisis or confusion and actually that creates the courage to share what they're thinking?
Yeah. I think a lot about attention. Where does your attention go? Your attention in a capitalist society is the most valuable thing about you. That's what everybody wants. So it's important to engage your attention all the time to tell you what you should be interested in, what you like, what you want to do. And to do that, you have to disengage your attention from where it wants to be. You don't have to plan to do that, but just the fact that you're flooding somebody with 5,000 adverts a day, which is apparently what we on average see each day, 5,000 other claims on your attention, apart from the things that you voluntarily choose to look at. All the time, each of us is drowning in a kind of mesh of things saying, you should be thinking about this, you should have an opinion about this, you shouldn't like that, you should not even know about that. You know, when kids start sort of looking around and finding that they like this or that or the other, and it isn't on the grid, they don't get a lot of encouragement for it. Those are the people we should be encouraging. The people who aren't sort of riveted to their TikTok.
It's still exercising free will.
Yeah, or free wanting, free love, actually, in the old-fashioned sense of that.
Yeah.
Stubbornness, I keep going back to that because I just was so stubborn, I remember when I was young. I just was so interested in some things and I wanted to pursue them, whatever everybody else was doing. But I didn't have anything like the pressure that somebody who's young now would have.
I mean, I think you and your contemporaries were probably called avant-garde back then. You know, I don't even know whether or not that term means anything to you, whether you would consider it to be, you know, a positive statement or something of that just, it reflects people's misunderstanding of what it is that you were trying to actually achieve when you started, you know. Steve Reich, you know, hugely influential to you. And eyes wide open, ears wide open to the arts and all that was possible, right? But considered to be avant-garde.
At the time, yeah, he was. And that doesn't, you know, liking somebody like Steve Reich doesn't mean you can't like the Four Seasons or, I don't mean the Vivaldi one, I mean the group from New Jersey.
Yeah.
So one of the things that was difficult when I was younger was loving both of these things that you weren't supposed to like both of.
Yes.
You know, so if you liked Steve Reich, then people would laugh at you for listening to
pop music,
Bo Diddley or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And vice versa. It would be, well, you like that stuff, that weird stuff, that electronic stuff, whatever. So I don't know, why is it so hard to say, I like a lot of it, I like all of it?
But then when you did it, we got Roxy Music. That's what Roxy Music is, right? It's a combination of this idea of being in art and fashion and searching for things that perhaps are considered avant-garde, but also big tunes.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day that when Roxy started, rock and roll was about 16 years old.
That is great.
If you think of it, 1955 is probably when you can say it started with sort of Bill Haley and rhythm and blues just becoming rock and roll, Little Richard, that kind of thing. 1955, 56. So that seemed like ancient history to us when we started Roxy Music.
Yeah.
And now, what is that? That's 70 years ago.
Yeah.
I suppose what I remember most was people saying, well, of course it won't last. It's a fad. And I was surprised that it lasted, actually. I didn't expect to still be doing something like this at my age. I didn't expect to ever reach my age, actually.
Wow. And yet here you are, busier than ever. And so much that I want to talk about. Thanks so much for doing the radio show with us on Chill, and such a beautiful experience.
Do you want to sit down?
As we knew it would be. Yeah, I'd love to. It was lovely to hear this beautiful framework, for lack of a better term, that you've created in order to create generative music, but it's by design, but it also, I'm sure, creates surprise for you.
Yeah. I think the misconceptions people have about artists is that artists walk around with sort of unrealized things in their head. And the process of being an artist is making those become real. But I don't really know any artists who work that way. You might have an idea of where you want to start, but the process of making something is the process of you starting to understand it as well. You know, that you find your way through making it, not you've got it all in your head. We're not architects, essentially. Architects have to plan it all in advance, because otherwise the things fall down. But in art, it doesn't matter if it all falls down.
But in working in a generative environment where something will present itself and you'll feel something, your instinct will begin. To some degree, it does away with some of the overthinking and the diligence that can get in the way. Has it affected in any way your relationship with your inner voice, which people focus a lot on in the creativity of art? That's where people say, you know, you got to do the work. And what they're saying is you have to dig as deep as you can to find something inside of you that you really want to share, will help you and it will help others. What's the relationship like with that voice and the inner voice in your experience?
Well, first of all, I should tell you a little bit how I think generative art works. So some people present it as though you kind of come up with a system and then the system does all the work for you. What that overlooks is that the system doesn't do anything interesting unless it has very interesting inputs, carefully curated inputs, which is a lot of work, and a lot of filtering on the other end, which is also a lot of work. So, and of course you built the machine as well, so you're tweaking that all the time as well. You know, if I want to get a result I like, I find I have to do more on change that rule, and so, I mean, if you think of the most simple generative machine, a set of wind chimes, right? That's a very simple generative art piece. You'd think, oh, well, that's easy to make. And it is easy to make, but then there are lots of choices. What notes will I have in that? How far apart will I space these things, which determines how often they'll hit? So how noisy and busy is it going to be? Even with something like a wind chime, there are a lot of decisions made, and they're artistic decisions. Just because you didn't plan the progress of that piece sound by sound, it doesn't make it any less of a challenge.
Even where you place them, and we have something like that in our house in California, and often I've moved it because you know, the wind will change direction, and I don't like the way the wind is conducting it. It's too strong.
Yeah.
It's become a Slipknot concert for me. I'm like, no, it's too intense. So, you know.
What does Slipknot mean?
Slipknot's a heavy metal band. They're a bunch of guys, like 9 of them came out of Iowa, dressed in homemade boiler suits and clown masks and all kind of craziness, and very theatrical, but an enormous amount of believability, like 100% committed to their craft. And also happen to be able to play like beasts. They'd come out and it would just be like, I don't even know how to describe it. They would hit the stage and it would just be like this radioactive explosion of energy. And they're still amazing in making music today, but yeah, powerful band.
Well, I have heard of them, but I don't think I've ever seen them.
Yeah, I'll send you some links. I think you'll dig it.
Embarrassed by. But just to ask you one more question, what do those 9 people do?
So, well, yeah, there's singers and there's guitar players and bass players, and then there's a couple of guys who play percussion, and they stand on hydraulic platforms up and down, hitting like steel drums and metal drums and all kinds of industrial stuff. So it's quite industrial.
Yeah.
There's a drummer and a DJ, and so everyone's got a role. And I think you'd have to ask them, but the general feeling I always got from the band was like, we're coming out of Iowa, small town Iowa. This is a great way to get out and go and see the world and survive, make some money and do something with our life. Everyone, let's get it together and make it a real thing. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty wild. You should check it out. So I want to talk a little bit about Bloom and the impact that creating that app back in, I guess it was 2008 perhaps, had on the way that you sort of made music from that point forward. Because that to me was, I guess, your first foray into seeing whether or not it could exist in the wider world and people would enjoy it and use it.
So I'd been making generative pieces for a long time. Some of the earliest ones, for example, involved long loops of tape that ran on different machines. The tape sort of wound around chair legs around the room to support it. In general, the systems that I used then were quite clumsy. Another one was I used 6 or 8 ghetto blasters, as they used to be called, with different CDs in them and different material on each CD, but combining in space. So they weren't synchronized together. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
Not being synchronized allowed new clusters of sound to appear.
Yeah.
And I always thought, I wonder how I could get that experience of something making itself in a form that people would listen to without having to go to one of my shows. Because I used to install these things in galleries and museums and so on.
It's also not lost on me that is a very early foray into what's become spatial audio. I mean, that is an immersive experience.
Yeah, it was very immersive. Yeah, some of them had 12 or 20 different sound sources. But the only way I could really make a version of it that was listenable to by a listener was to put it onto a stereo recording, which of course loses all the spatial aspect, or most of it. And it wasn't really until computers came along that I thought, here's a way I could make something that could make itself as you're listening to it. So you know you're listening to it the first time that particular version of the piece has ever happened. And I think that makes a difference. People realize that, I think. You know, when there's a football game on now and you're watching it and you know you're in the same situation as everyone else. Nobody knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's quite different from watching it 5 minutes later even. when you know that somebody else knows the result already.
Yeah. And that's the world we live in right now, where everybody wants to know exactly what they want to know when they want to know it.
Yeah.
And you're right, we've lost some of that eventization, the unique properties of that experience.
Yes. Yeah, so I wanted it to feel, I wanted you to know that what you were listening to was unique to that moment. Nobody had had that experience before. And so when I started working with Peter Chilvers, that's what we found ourselves doing, starting to use quite a lot of the ideas that came out of games, basically, that you could put into a computer. And of course, the most important thing was not the computer, which had existed for a while, but the fact of it being in a phone that you carried with you. So that made it a quite different experience, that you could have this unreplicated piece of music.
And fast forward 17 years later, and to some degree, whether it's by chance or by design, the director and the creator of the software that ultimately became your documentary, it's an extension of that principle, right?
Yeah.
Quite a unique experience for people to see you on camera at all. For the longest time, you seemed reticent to ever really be caught on camera. Can I ask you what being on camera meant to you when you were in your process, and why you didn't really like that experience?
I think it's because it pulls you out of where you really are in the present, and it puts you into a sort of future when you're looking back at yourself. So it puts you into a sort of strange, ironic way of being. Instead of it's like when a cameraman says, "Oh, just be normal." Suddenly you are incapable of being normal. It's a little bit like somebody saying, "Don't think of elephants."
Yeah.
As soon as the thought is in your mind, you can't lose it. So I resented the way it took you out of where you were at that moment.
Yeah.
And I kind of understood what so-called primitive people were saying when they said it steals your soul, because it does in a way. It takes it out of you, because it says, oh, you are not just in this moment, you're going to be in the future, in this moment, again and again and again and again. So this isn't just any old moment.
You're trapped in this moment forever.
Yeah, yes, that's right. You're fixed. Some part of you is fixed there.
This documentary is fascinating because of the way that you've been able to create unlimited amount of variations through the idea of the narrative and technology meeting in perfect unison. I read some interesting feedback on it. Somebody actually drew a line through it and that ended with AI, and sort of said at this time where we're concerned about the impact AI is going to have on personalization of art and the attention that people will give to AI, which is the currency. We need people to make bold artistic decisions rather than put it through a randomization effect. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that, and whether or not you think what the relationship between what you and the director and the software creator and Peter are trying to do, and where the world is going from an AI point of view.
The biggest problem for me about AI is not intrinsic to AI, it's to do with the fact that it's owned by the same few people. And I have less and less interest in what those people think, and more criticisms of what the effect of their work has been. I think social media has been a catastrophe, and mildly useful at the same time. It is possible for both things to coexist. But I think in terms of what it's done to societies, it's been a catastrophe. What it's done to politics has been completely toxic. Again, that could have been avoided, I think. If it had started out in a not-for-profit regime, it would have been different, because maximize engagement wouldn't have been the sort of headline of the whole project. Maximum engagement is just another word for maximize profit. And if that's your intention, then you get what we got. Just like in the American food industry is maximize profit, which is why you have a lot of very, very unhealthy people. If maximize profit is the bottom line, then that is such a lowly ambition that it produces very bad results. What about maximize happiness? What about maximize the good sides of human relationships rather than the toxic sides, which is what's now happened. So put that aside. Now, talking about AI itself, I've always been happy to welcome new technologies and to see what you could do with them that nobody else thought of doing with them, and what things they could do other than those that they were designed for. Because with all music technology, it's always very interesting that stuff is designed for one reason, and then people start to find new things they could do that are completely beyond what the designer was thinking about. Distortion is a good example. You know, distortion is in a way the sound of popular music. A lot of the things that we find uniquely exciting to do with equipment kind of going wrong.
Yeah.
That's quite a bizarre thought, isn't it? That you design equipment to do this, then you start using it to do something else, which it doesn't do very well.
Yeah.
And you get to like the sound of the not very wellness.
Yeah, but that's a process of letting go, isn't it? And you talk about that in the book. And I think those two words are crucial to the human experience, beyond even just art.
Yeah.
Let go. It's the hardest and the most important thing for us to try to get our head around. Is that part of this process as well? Like, at some point, hopefully, and I don't know if this is a step too far, you might invite us into the Bloom box.
I was going to do that. But, But I thought it would be better go there now, actually.
Well, let's go take a look at that. I'd love to show that.
You can get some film of these things when it's a bit darker. Okay, let me just...
Thanks.
You might think that this is what my studio looks like all the time, but...
Are you cleaned up just for us?
I didn't. Somebody else did. Shall I tell you about, well, the music archive?
Please.
Okay.
Please.
So, this all started with the fact that I make so much music. Some of it isn't really worth listening to. Or some people would say none of it is worth listening to.
But that is subjective and a human right.
but I just, whatever I work on, even if it's just I'm trying out a new synthesizer or something, and I think that's quite an interesting sound. So rather than just store the sound in the huge library of sounds I have, I always make a short little piece with it, just so I can remember what that sound was.
And you name them all?
I give them names. They're not usually very interesting.
But how do you come up with names? I'm fascinated by names. How do you, like, is it quick? Do you not think too much about it? Is it just shoot from the hip?
Well, that's a name. That Snouty is the name of one sound.
Short snouty jam.
Yeah, so Machinist is another. So this is why I needed a different kind of archive.
Right.
So for about 40 years or so, I've been making bits and pieces of music that some of them are intended as pieces of music, others are just mementos of a particular sound, or thinking that something that I thought, oh, maybe that will come useful later on, you know.
Do you even consider the term writer's block as something that's reality, or do you just go to work, even if you're not particularly inspired in sort of traditional sense of the word? It's like, I'm going to create something. Yeah,
well, yes, I do. I just get started. So, because I have two media that I work in, so I make these light pieces as well as sound pieces. If I really get sick of being in the studio, I start working on some light pieces for a few days, and vice versa, you know. So, so I've got two things to drift between.
Yeah.
But I always remember this quote from from
the tobacco industry. You'd be amazed how inspiring the tobacco industry has been over the years.
It's helped me no end. No, Picasso once said that inspiration does come, but it has to find you working. And so I think if you think you've got writer's block,
get to work.
Just get to work and try doing something mundane, maybe, you know. Yeah. Don't try to write the great American novel. Try to write a nice letter to a friend or something like that.
Yeah.
Just get something going. You have to get the thing running again. It's like, if you're an athlete, you have to practice every day, you know. You don't just wait till the day of the race and think, oh, I better get limbered up. You're in shape the whole time. So a lot of this is me staying in shape, but it means that I have, let me see, how many pieces do I now have in here? 10,550 tracks. Equates to a listening time of 44 days, 8 hours, 38 minutes and 28 seconds. Starting now. So the first thing I thought was, well, I need an archive that can take me through those in interesting ways, because I won't remember the name of anything.
Yeah.
So the first thing we made was quite a simple idea. Imagine that I was tidying up or something in that room, or writing to somebody or something like that. But I want my archive to be flashing past all the time. So now I've set it so that every 2 seconds it's going to change to another piece.
Wow, so you're just giving yourself a flash frame, a quick memory of something to see whether it takes you back there or joins you here.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we do this in real time? If I found one that I really liked and said, let's do something with that, say that piece there.
Okay, so I'll first of all stop, and then I'll go back to find what that was.
Yeah.
It was that one, wasn't it, I think?
That one.
Yeah. Then I would just either go and find that piece, which is from 2021.
At 5:07.
Yeah, so then I might go and work on that piece. So that was fine, and it's been very useful. But we then came up with another idea. I said to Peter, wouldn't it be nice if we could hear 2 or 3 tracks actually stuck together, played at the same time? So we came up with this thing called the shuffler, or Peter did, I should say. I didn't have anything to do with programming it at all. And so this is an example of the shuffler. So as soon as I click this, it's going to make a new piece of music, which will be some random combination from my nearly
44
11,000.
days.
Yeah. So, and I can guarantee pretty certainly that I will never have heard this piece before. Okay, so that's a new piece of music.
Wow, how interesting for you to be able to have an experience that most artists will never have, because they get it to a place of completion and then never want to listen to it again. You get a first impression of the music you've made. Wow.
And if I hit it again, I'll get a new piece.
When you listen back to your own music, but in a brand new composition that you've never heard before, how does it affect your own sense of creative identity, if at all? It's presenting itself to you. You made it, but you didn't.
Well, I made all the bits in it. I never thought of putting them together in that way before. So one of the things is that you discover quite a lot about your taste.
Yeah, that's right.
For instance, there are things combining in here that if you heard them separately, you would probably never think, wow, they'd make a nice piece put together.
That's so cool, though. Have you ever made anything that's shown up in a public attention for film, TV, anything like that from this?
Yeah. In fact, well, I've just, in my Apple playlists.
Yeah, that's right.
I just did. There was one of these in each of those playlists.
That's what Amber Aram is.
Yeah, that's right. But when I make film music, I make film music sometimes, I nearly always start here. So by the way, I should tell you another thing.
Yeah.
If I hear a combination I like, I can mix it a little bit, so I can turn bits up and down, get a mix I like, and then I can go save combination. And that enters then this list of combinations I've saved. There it is.
Amazing.
And the other thing I should say about it is that each of the pieces plays as a loop. So when it gets to the end, it will just go back to the beginning. So that means, because they're all different lengths, it means the piece itself will change throughout the day as it plays.
So because you have components that can be randomly selected out of more than 10,000 pieces of music, I can't do the math that quickly.
Oh, it's trillions.
Okay, so as someone who clearly loves the idea of staying present and focusing on what you're focusing on now, and at the risk of sounding morbid, do you find in anything at all that the idea of long after you've shifted off into whatever the next experience spiritually is, that you'll still be making music for the rest of time?
Yeah. No, I find that intriguing, and it's a funny it is a kind of immortality in a way.
Yeah.
But I mean, everybody has a kind of immortality.
You put all your narcissism into this.
It all goes into here. Oh, look, this is interesting. It's just about to loop back. In fact, this one has just looped back.
Yeah, so it's changed the dynamic altogether.
It's
a feeling
kind of a
it's
nice
completely
piece, this.
changed.
I like the idea of making things that will continue to have a life without me around, you know. Like these things here, you know, they're very simple, but they keep changing and making new combinations.
You've successfully created an AI version of yourself so that when your body finally decides to stop working...
Yeah, which looks like being very soon.
Stop. Your creativity will continue to evolve.
Yeah. That's
crazy. I love it.
But I think that sort of happens with every artist in a way, because what you leave behind changes forever. You know, even though it looks like the same painting, of course everything else is changing around it, so it changes. So I don't think it's that revolutionary. I mean, it's nice to be able to do it.
It's cool. Can we go look at a few light boxes before we leave you to your...
Would you like? Shall I leave this piece?
Yeah, can we leave it
playing?
playing? Yeah. It's so nice.
I'll put it through the speakers outside as well.
It's so nice. Lead the way. I'm glad we're going to get a chance to look at these, because I love your lightbox art and work.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna ask if I can put the lights off so you can see them.
100%. Yes, please.
They get better as it gets darker. Yeah, I'll put the kettle on.
Yeah, nice. Thanks.
And its sound will contribute to the general ambience.
How fun.
Okay, so this piece is looking quite good. It's dark enough in this corner to see it.
Yeah.
Smell this, Zane. This is my current favourite tea.
What is that?
It's an African tea from Morocco.
I love that. We're going to have that.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Isn't it lovely?
Yeah, this one's beautiful. And it's interesting. I don't see too many that have curvature.
Soft curves, yeah. No, I used to do mostly soft curved ones a long time ago, but then I've been through a geometric period, and now I'm back in the curves again.
This one's really beautiful.
So that's a fairly new one as well over there.
Oh, so clean, so nice. This one's generating color, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or is it static?
No, that's changing. That'll change. If I switch it off and on again, then it will come back in different colors. There you go.
It's so good.
Told you.
It's so good.
I did that not long ago. It was being filmed, and I said, you see, it will come back in different colors. It came back identical colors. And I said, oh, that's unusual. I did it again. Identical colors. So this is another kind where you have three color fields here. That one, and the one behind.
Oh yeah,
which happens to be sort of the same color now. But if I switch this off and on again.
And that's not on every one, is it? No, you're right.
This idea of using a color background it's coming out of there, you see. I made the first one of these about 4 years ago, I guess, something like that.
With the back color.
Yeah.
Beautiful. What, if I may ask, and if you find the words, nice way for us to finish and have a cup of tea, do you get out of this experience of creating these? What feeling do you get?
Same as the music, really. Well, the only reason I ever made music was because I just wanted to hear something. You know, when you've listened to a lot of music, you think, I wish there was something more like that, but much longer, or that had those kinds of feelings in it, but they didn't keep interrupting it with this other thing. That was often the feeling. And so I started, the first piece of music I really made on my own was, I'd found this big lampshade at art school, big metal lampshade, which had a sound like a bell. And there was a tape recorder there, so I could record this bell at 3 different speeds, which meant in 3 different octaves. And I just loved hearing this simple, flat sound. And I thought, that sounds like music to me. And I didn't really know at that time that music like that existed. There had been, it was called musique concrète, you know. Excuse me, I'll just do the tea.
And that gets back to the principle of what you talk about in the book, which is, what do you like?
Yeah, what is it you really like?
What is it you really like?
Yeah.
The quote that kind of, I guess, has guided you all the way through.
I think that is such an important question. And people think it's about self-indulgence or selfishness or something like that. But it isn't really. It's about where is your attention? Where does your attention want to be? And as I said earlier, in a world where everything is trying to claim your attention, to sell you something or to get you to vote for something or to believe in something, what your attention wants to do is very important. And it just is constantly being bombarded by other demands. You know, no, you should look at this. Hey, this is really interesting. Hey, you'd like this. And to sort of say, okay, hold on, what was it that I liked? What was the thing that really mattered to me? And the things that really matter to you can be even quite trivial things, you know, like I like cooking my eggs in a certain way. Or it can be, I really care about what's going on in Gaza now, even though the newspapers don't think of it as a story any longer. But you really ought to be the shepherd of your own attention. You can't let that be stolen from you. And I think this is I was saying that one of the primary qualities of an artist, I think, is stubbornness. And that's what the stubbornness is about. It's about refusing to have your attention stolen from you. Let's sit down again.
I cannot tell you how grateful I am and how much fun I've had being back here again to spend time.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To just talk with you, you know?
It's very kind of you, thank you.
In the spirit of everything that you've created. Oh, it smells so good.
It's
Wow.
It's
amazing.
The nicest thing about this comes in a can which has a little QR code in it.
Yeah.
And the QR code sends you to a playlist of songs they think
Perfect.
They're mostly
Perfect.
African songs.
Would you send me this piece of music now you've saved it?
Yeah, I will. I'll just make it now.
Great.
Because I'll just record it, because at the moment it's not being recorded. A relatively gentle fade up.
At the risk of making this too grand a statement, that is now going to be one of one.
Yeah, that'll be the only existing version of this piece of music. Yeah.
Wow. They warned me when you come in here, you'll never leave, so maybe this is where I say goodbye. Let's have such a good time.
That's true.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I am very happy in this room, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, thank you for letting us into your happy place and allowing us to move freely with you. And for the tea.
It's a pleasure.
All right, guys. I think we should leave Brian alone.
Well, have the tea.
Oh, I'm staying. You have to go.
Yeah.